We are ready to go when you are.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I would like to call to order tonight's workshop of the ISD 191 Burnsville-Eagan-Savage School Board, where we will be endeavoring to determine which of the two applicants will be selected for the vacancy that was left open when Director Holliger resigned in October. We will start I will start by inviting our first applicant. There we go. Can you hear us, Brandon? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh.
And welcome. Let me just, there's one thing I need to do. All right. So Brandon Norberg is our the first applicant who has expressed interest and has applied for the opening on the ISD 191 school board. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you.
I would like to start by introducing our the school board. We have Director Leslie Chester, Director Darcy Schatz.
Good evening, Brendan.
Good evening.
Treasurer Scott Hume, and Vice Chair Eric Miller, as well as Superintendent Dr. Battle.
Hello, Dr. Battle. Hi, Eric. Hi, Scott.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you guys? How you doing,
Good.
Scott?
Good.
So I'll just give a brief overview of the proceedings for tonight, what you can expect.
Okay.
Basically, we have two individual interviews, one for each of our applicants. That will last about 45 minutes.
Okay.
There will be an opening statement. You'll have a chance to make an opening statement, followed by 6 questions. And then there will be a little give and take questions if there are any. And the only thing I would ask is that given that we have a limited amount of time together, you will have 3 minutes per question to answer, and just ask that you be thoughtful in using those 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right. And then the selection process, just to give you a general overview of the process. So this will be the summary of the selection process that will be used at our regular board meeting on Thursday, December 10th at 6:30 p.m. When we reach the agenda item to appoint a new board member, the chair will ask board members if there was a nomination for the first applicant. Following a nomination, the chair will then ask board members if there is a second for same. Following a second, board members will then vote by roll call for the first applicant. This same process will be repeated for the second applicant. Once a clear winner receives a majority of votes, the board will then take formal action on a resolution to appoint the applicant. The appointee will be sworn in at our organizational meeting, which begins at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 14th, and will join the board at the dais and begin his or her service that same evening. If there is a tie vote in which the board is deadlocked on December 10th, then the nomination process would be closed. The board would then reopen the application process in January, and we would welcome both of our current applicants to reapply.
Okay.
So with that, Brandon, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement. Please tell us about yourself and your background, and why you have applied for the vacancy on the Board of Education.
Well, again, thank you guys for the opportunity. My name is Brandon Neuerberg. I'm 49 years old. I'm a father of 2 children, been married for 24 plus years now. And, I grew up in northern Minnesota in a small town, and moved to the big city life here a little over a decade ago, and have been living here the entire time. We put our oldest boy from 5th grade on through the Burnsville School District, and our youngest boy it's the only school district he's ever known. I grew up in a family of educators. When I graduated high school in 1990, the local newspaper did a story on my mother and I, because my mother decided to go back to college when she was older, and she was graduating with her first degree. So unfortunately, there I was in the front page of the local newspaper with a picture of me and my mother as we were both graduating at the same time. So it was kind of a neat deal. She went on to get her doctorate degree. I met my wife while she was in graduate school. It was kind of funny because her mother, my wife's mother, was doing the same thing. And my mom and my wife's mother were sharing an office in graduate school. And that's how we met. Believe it or not, I was set up on a blind date with my wife from our mothers, and it's lasted 26 plus years now total. My wife is in education. She's currently I guess her technical title is the Director of Education for the Shakopee, Mdewakan, and Sioux community. So I've watched her get all her degrees in education and background through special ed and everything. And I've always been involved with her in certain things. Like we'll talk about things in different scenarios or stuff like that, where like she gets my opinion on it. And I guess I've just always been interested in it. My wife's entire side of her family is educators. I've always made the joke that we've got enough people in our family to start a K through 12 school, including administration. So my father-in-law was a guidance counselor. I had the ability to take the other road and take the I don't know if you call it an easier side of life, but it was something that I always look back and said, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably go back to be a math teacher. I guess it's just my way of feeling that it's time to, I can get more involved in the education. I think I've got some pretty good ideas in regards to curriculum, things like that I've talked about with my wife in the past. So I saw an opportunity and I thought, let's see if I can get involved and help out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Brandon. Next, I believe Director Miller is asking the first question.
All right.
Or is it Chester? Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
Director
Chester.
Chester.
Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
The first question is, what qualities do you think are most important in a school board member? And then followed with that is, how do you reflect those qualities?
Well, I think your qualities have to be first and foremost that you're completely unbiased in any situation. I mean, you have to be able to know what the main agenda is, the end goal, and the purpose. For me, the understanding of the school board has always been that education needs to be emphasized, needs to be thought of. There's your thoughts and opinions are valid, but at the end of the day, we'd have to be so focused on the fact that the education is what comes first, and we have to put the best foot forward in that scenario. I guess coming from my thought on that aspect, I've never. It's like politics. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't like to get involved in one side or the other. I know these positions are what they call bipartisan, which means you can't express that. I think I fit that well because it's not something that I wish to get in and get into an argument about. Everybody's got their opinion and they're entitled to it. But at the end of the day, the right thing needs to be done. It has to be done with, the end goal, the right thing in mind.
Thank you. All right, next we have Director Miller.
Yes. Sorry, I'm arranging my screen here. All right. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Eric.
As a board member, how would you prioritize competing needs and priorities when there are multiple right perspectives on an issue and you're required to make a decision that will receive mixed reviews no matter what you decide?
um, it's yeah, that was one that I struggled with. As many entities and as many things as there are involved in the school district, there needs to be a cooperation. There needs to be cooperation from the top down. There needs to be people that get along and understand that the best thing, what comes out best for the district, for the community, for the children, for the teachers. Prioritizing it, I guess. I mean, with I somewhat find the question a little vague because without saying that we're going to do this or this, there's obviously budgets, things put in place that you'd have to take into consideration all the main factors and really sit down and just figure out what that best result is. I mean, it can't be an easy decision, obviously, and it's got to come with what, again, at the end of the day, is going to be the best for the community, the district, and the students and teachers.
Thank you. Next, Director, and we'll ask the next question.
All right. So my question is, as board members, we are required to represent all resident students and families who live here. This represents a personal sacrifice given the many hats we wear as parents, friends, and community members. What is your awareness of this reality in terms of always being a public servant wherever you may find yourself in our community? What do you imagine this sacrifice might look like for you personally?
I'm sorry, Scott, my microphone or my speaker cut out. Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, sure. Did it cut out for anybody else? Hopefully it was just not my internet. All right. As board members, we are required to represent all residents, students, and families who live here. This represents a personal sacrifice given the many hats we wear as parents, friends, and community members. What is your awareness of this reality in terms of always being a public servant wherever you may find yourself in our community? And then what do you imagine this sacrifice might look like for you personally?
I guess from the sacrifice standpoint, that's kind of been it feels like it's my whole life. Everything I do, I feel like I'm sacrificing for something, for the better good, for someone else, for the kids, whatever it is. I see that sacrifice as being well justified and well worth it. I know it's going to eat up some time. Could be an hour, could be 6 hours, whenever the meetings run. I understand that they can tend to get long. Wearing that hat in the public and as a servant, again, you've got to be, obviously you can't be talking about personal issues. You can't make anything personal. You can't get involved in a discussion where it could put you in a position that shows you were showing some kind of favoritism or biasness towards a family or a student or a incident that may have happened that you heard about. I guess in most cases, when people talk all the time. I hear people talking about school issues all the time, and it would become obviously an issue where there's no longer involvement in it. Like you just kind of got to, we're going to let the board handle it, or however it may be discussed and handled at the end of the day. I think it's an honor. I mean, I think it's something that people as recognized in the community as something that your sacrifice goes towards the better good, and you're looking at the end. I mean, again, everything about this is supposed to be about the students and getting a proper education.
Thank you. Next, Director Schatz will ask the next question.
Okay, Brandon, a parent calls or emails you asking that you take care of a problem they're having at their school. What do you do?
Well, I guess the first question would be have they gone through the proper, I guess you'd call them channels, so to say, at the school? Have you talked to, the principal or the whatever it may be? If I understand the process properly, this is a scenario where it needs to be brought through the proper change, whether that's through the principal or the dean or whoever it may be, to the superintendent, to have the issue resolved. I I don't believe it becomes a board issue until it gets past the superintendent. So you'd almost have to just direct them into, maybe it's, again, I'm not 100% sure. I apologize. If it's an email to Dr. Battle or through the, file, again, just making sure that they take the proper steps before it gets brought up. That way there doesn't look like you're getting involved to have any kind of, showing any kind of favoritism or anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll return to Director Chester.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, I'll read for a little while because it's a longer question. Tell us about a time in which you were involved in a group decision that had significant impact on others and you did not agree with the final decision. How did you handle both the decision and your lack of agreement with the final outcome?
Are you referring to a school incident or just any incident, any general incident in life?
I would say it's like we have a board decision to make, and
No, I understand what you're getting at
Yeah.
as far as how that, but are you referring to an incident that I've experienced personally or within the school as my kids have come up? Just any kind of general?
no, this isn't an incident. This is a decision. So we're making a decision on we're acting and
I understand. I'm sorry.
voting. Yeah,
I thought you were referring to a personal incident that had happened.
No, this is a decision related to something that we have to do as a board, and that is going to have a significant, whatever this decision is going to be, is going to have a significant impact on others, and that you don't agree with the final decision. So like maybe you weren't part of the majority vote.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. I apologize.
And I think to clarify too, Brandon, it's really a description of something like what Director Chester just described, but that you experienced in your own life. So when were you involved in a decision and you didn't agree with the final outcome?
Well, that in your own life, that happens all the time in a marriage, doesn't it? No, I get it. Yeah, there's, boy, I tell you, it happens all the time. I mean, you can't put yourself above the situation. Number one, again, not agreeing with something doesn't mean that it isn't right. I've been involved in those situations. I've been involved with those situations with my children that have to gone, issues in the school that I haven't agreed with. But I've counted on the fact that just because I don't agree, that it's going to work out for the better. And you see it through. You've got to be able to have the ability to understand that, again, there's other options. You don't have the only option available, and whether you agree or not, you've just got to get on board then and push for that and make sure that we work as a team to get to the best result possible.
Thank you. And our final question, it comes from Director Miller.
All right. Please explain in more detail how your background relates to the ability to oversee this organization, especially as it relates to governance versus management.
As far as my background goes with the sales experience I've had, it gives you the ability, which I don't believe I'm showing in this interview, but it gives you the ability to be able to talk, find common ground, or figure out by reading people. I've always felt that I've been able to read people very well. In all the years that I was in selling cars, for instance, it was like I could get to a final. I could find out what the customer wanted but they didn't want to say it, like they were embarrassed about it. In relation to, I guess, the governance versus management, you're looking at a difference of all the entities versus one, or all instances or entities versus a singular or a isolated incident. And I don't know that anybody has the ability to have that full control. So in a more of a management situation, you wouldn't have any. I don't know that you'd have really the ability to make any decision in that. It would have to become more of again, it's got to be a decision based on everyone.
Great, thank you. And what questions do you have of us? This is your opportunity to ask us questions about anything board related that will help you.
It's really eye-opening. The application alone, which was I found very interesting. And again, I hope I didn't seem odd. I haven't done something like this in probably 25 years. So I may be a good talker and BSer, but I may not be the best interviewer. But I know the decisions that the school boards have to go through. Again, watching, I've been in board meetings before, sat and watched them. Some of the ones that I watched were were probably nowhere near the level of what I'm gonna experience if I get elected or chosen in this scenario. It was a small town reservation area where it was more about family and friends than it was about education. I could never understand how the president of the school board didn't even get through 6th grade, but here he was making decisions on education. Knowing that, I guess it always drove me from. That was one of the points too that I always said, boy, I'd like to do it, but I don't know if I can handle it. Well, I think I can handle it. I don't think I'm worried about that. And I know it's going to be demanding. What do you guys individually experience as what do you experience individually as the most the biggest hardship, I guess, would be the question I have.
That's a good question. Anyone want to?
I'll take a swing at that. I mean, to be honest, I haven't had this so much as it's been warned to me, because as you know, Spencer's in middle school, and I think it comes along a little bit later, but and we kind of got to this in one of the questions, but there is definitely a necessity to you wear the hat all the time, even when you're wearing other hats. And while part of that is consideration is whether you tamp down your social media presence, or you just don't speak out as much in public as you might want to, because you're representing a larger organization. But it's also what I was going to say earlier is I've had previous board members tell me whose kids had gone through the program that they just stopped going to conferences because they couldn't go and speak as a parent with the teachers, because it turned into a conversation about the other things going on in the district. And so they started sending their spouse or the significant other. So, I mean, those are the examples of some of the sacrifices we end up having to make. Now, that hasn't necessarily happened to me yet, but
once the teachers understand you're on the board, they don't want to talk about your kid. They want to talk about other issues.
Yeah, that has occurred to certain people. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's just another example, but I think the biggest thing is just the weight you carry and the time. We spend a lot of time at it, and we understand that the decisions we make impact a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of communities.
And for me, it's been the decisions that you make don't affect people you don't know. The decisions you make affect your kids and your friends' kids and things like that. And so you're not making decisions for anybody in a bubble, because you will hear and the people that you are affecting.
I could see that.
I think other challenges are things that, like going through budgeting or having to do finance cuts are never easy, no matter what entity you're working for. but knowing that you're making, some hard decisions that, do affect your kids, your neighbors' kids, your community's kids, and, your children's friends, I mean, I think that's really hard. Me personally, even knowing full well the financial benefits, having to vote to close 3 schools was hard. I think that was probably the hardest day for me, being on this school board. Other parts, kind of like what Director Miller was sharing too, is um, trying to make sure you can still advocate for your kids without somebody, without anybody perceiving your board hat on, and being very abundantly clear the difference between the two. It's still challenging in some settings for me, for sure.
You all took all the good answers. I agree with everything. I've experienced all of the things that you all have. I have not experienced what Director Miller referenced, as far as whenever I go to my kids' parent-teacher conferences, we strictly talk about my kids, and I've been very fortunate, I guess. I haven't heard that from other former board members, that's been an issue. So I think for me, it's been really good that I've still been able to do things like go to conferences and talk to my kids' teachers about my kids. I am always aware that even if I'm technically there as a parent, I still do, that board hat is always kind of on underneath your parent hat, whether you want it to be or not, and they see you that way. So it is important, I think, to always keep that in mind, whether you're interacting with teachers or other staff or just your kids' friends or your kid friends' parents, that I think they probably perceive you differently when you have that hat on underneath whatever other hats you may be wearing at any given time.
And I will add on to that it's your kids are affected very much by your presence on the school board, because they hear the talk at school. They hear when teachers talk about contract negotiations. They hear all of that, and so you're putting them in a position, even though you're the one of the school board. Your kids know, your kids hear how other people feel about board decisions, or even about conversations that are going on, and how the board is perceived. And so that has to be, that's just the reality of the position.
And I completely agree with everything that each of you has already said. I think dovetailing on what Darcy's saying too is, it's not an individual sacrifice. It's a family sacrifice, for many different reasons. But time is, time demands ebb and flow. The demands of the job itself. For me, what I've been most challenged by, particularly during the pandemic, is I've challenged myself to really make sure that I'm, before the pandemic, was out and meeting people and talking with people and listening to people, so that I bring their perspectives to the board table. And social media just doesn't cut it during the pandemic. And the ability to meet with people and make sure that that my perspective isn't limited just to my own bubble. That's been a real challenge for me. And, it's what we need to do in terms of representing each and every single one of our students, making sure that our own individual bubble doesn't overtake the service that we are contributing to the community.
I'll just, because we answered your question, we talked about the sacrifices and challenges, but just to be very clear, there's some big rewards also. You do get to be involved and as for me, just the simple essence of the service is a reward in of itself. But I've always said the the best day of the whole thing is when you spend a whole day sitting on the lawn at the football field and hand out diplomas to those kids that are coming up and about to start their lives. It's an amazing experience. I would, I wouldn't, you'd go all this every time just to spend that day doing that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Do you have another question for us?
I guess I really don't. I know. I've seen. I know a few of you have been on there for quite a long time. I know it's something that I would look forward to doing. Being able to again give any input I can, help out. I know I coached one of your boys, Scott, and I don't know if you remember that because that was quite some time ago now. But
Oh yes, I remember it. I think
yeah,
it was at least 10 years ago. It must have been right after you moved to the Twin Cities.
I think it was the first year we were here back in 2008 or 9 or 10 or whatever it was there. I want to say Nathan was in 5th grade, which means your boy would have been in 6th grade, I think, or somewhere going into that neighborhood. But
That sounds about right.
yeah, but I've just everything I've ever done. I've coached a lot of ball, baseball. Eric will attest. I coached from the stands for hockey. But I've always been about a kid first thing. I've always advocated in the sport for the children just to make sure that they're getting the fair share. And I believe that I feel that that's kind of a job of a board member is you're a coach for the kids. You're there to advocate for them. You're there to make sure they're getting what they need for them to get the best possible outcome. And thinking about those things and being a coach and I was never out there to do anything about me. I'd even ask the umpires and refs and stuff, hey, it's ain't about you or me, it's about the kids. Let's make sure that they're getting their fair share. Don't take away an opportunity for them. And I guess I'd really like to be a part of that. In as far as education goes. Like I said, I may not have a degree in education. I by trade, I was an architect that turned into a salesman and found a more lucrative life. So, but I think I put it on my resume that it's common sense is it's something that's I always say it's the dirtiest two-word phrase in the English language these days because it doesn't seem like a lot of people want to use it anymore. And when you can find a group of people that can use common sense to find good results, you're going to end up with good results.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I don't want to cut you short of making a final statement. It sounds like you made a lovely final statement, but are there any other thoughts that you did want to share with us this evening?
Oh, I'm good. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. It was really great meeting you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, so we have about 15 minutes before we need to start preparing for the next interview. I think we can probably take a 15-minute break. Just be back at 6:15.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave the call up for me.
Me too, but I'll turn my camera off and step away.
Okay. All right, I think we have our next candidate, Sue Saeed, waiting in the waiting room. There she is. Good evening, Sue. You're on mute.
Do you hear me now?
You're good.
Awesome.
Great, thank you. All right, well, welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome you and thank you for your interest in applying for this vacancy on the ISD 191 school board. We'll start, as you may already know, we had 2 individual interviews, one with Brandon Nurberg, and now you're the second candidate.
Mhm.
And I'll start by introducing my fellow board members. We have Director Darcy Schatz,
Hi, Sue.
Hello.
Director Leslie Chester,
Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Director Scott Hume,
Hello.
and Vice Chair Eric Miller,
Good evening.
as well as our Superintendent, Dr. Battle.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming. So I'll give a little overview first of the interview process and then of the selection process. Basically, we'll start with opening statements, and then there will be 6 questions to follow, and then a give and take where you have the opportunity to ask us questions.
Sure.
And we may or may not have 45 minutes sometimes goes quickly, sometimes it doesn't. We want to hear from you, and we want you to have time to thoughtfully answer the questions and use the 3 minutes to answer each question. In terms of the selection process, this is the summary of the selection process that will be used at our regular board meeting on Thursday, December 10th at 6:30 p.m. When we reach the agenda item to appoint a new board member, the chair will ask board members if there is a nomination for the first applicant. Following a nomination, the chair will then ask board members if there is a second for same. Following a second, board members will then vote by roll call for the first applicant. This same process will be repeated for the second applicant. Once a clear winner receives a majority of votes, the board will take formal action on a resolution to appoint the preferred applicant. The appointee will be sworn in at our regular, our organizational meeting, which begins at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, January 14th, and will join the board at the dais and begin his or her service that same evening. If there is a tie vote in which the board is deadlocked on December 10th, then the nomination process would be closed. The board would then reopen the application process in January and would welcome both of our current candidates to reapply. With that, we'll start with the opening statement. Please tell us about yourself and your background and why you have applied for the vacancy on the Board of Education.
Sure. Well, I first want to thank you guys for this opportunity. I am glad to be kind of back, on the bandwagon of trying to get into being a school board member in my district. Well, my name is Swad, but I go by Sue. I grew up in Atlanta. I moved to Minnesota around 2000. I attended junior high in Owatonna High School. So you can understand that culture shock right there. But I am very fortunate to have experienced that because it has given me much opening and understanding in how communities operate and how schools are designed. And also the fact that, all teachers have the same goal in mind. And all educators have the same goal in mind, which is providing the best education possible for students. That being said, I am a graduate from Burnsville High School. My mother did move from Owatonna to here, I would say around my freshman year. And I graduated from 05 in Burnsville. So it was a lot more different than it is right now, because I did attend the senior campus. So I was one of those people who did cry when they closed the senior campus, but I totally understood the reasoning behind it. And, you know, the most important thing for me when I decided to apply for school board member was this deep feeling that I had to make sure that that I did something back to the community I grew up in, but I also raised my 4 kids in. And that was my main core, to give back to that community. And, you know, being involved in the schools, and also just community members, and having met people who were just strangers to me when I first started having kids in this district, who now who are, you know, good friends of mine, who are colleagues, who are teachers, who are educators, business owners, and you know, their encouragement into having me run for this position, because I think they seen it in me before I seen it in myself, that I needed to run for something. And I wanted to start with the one important topic in my life that made me who I am today, which is education. I know that, you know, education is just what they say, a topic we're so used to here in the Western world. But when you go and visit other countries, education is hope. Education is the doorway to giving you a better life. And I think we get so used to education being sort of free in our country that we forget that many do not have the simple basic thing, right? And I wanted to make, you know, put that out there and be part of something that could really transform many lives for more years to come. So that is why I decided to run for school board member.
Thank you, Sue. And my apologies, I neglected to mention that you have 3 minutes to answer.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I talk too much again? Okay.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Okay, I'll make sure. Okay, thank you.
So the first question comes from Director Chester.
Hi. The first question is, what qualities do you think are most important in a school board member? Followed by, how do you reflect those qualities?
The most important thing, I think, in every organization is the ability to listen without having a response ready already in your mind. Being able to be present in that moment. And I've learned that the hard way when I was doing some child protection services as a social worker a few years ago, because right away you go into these homes and you have an agenda, right? You have these things you need to check off in a checklist. And I realized that at that time, listening and communicating afterwards is the most important thing. And I hope I can bring those skills to the table for myself to grow as a school board member if elected. But I think the one thing that I know for sure is being able to give every person on the table an opportunity to speak the issues and whatever is on their mind and collaborate, because I don't think there is any spot that you cannot meet at. There's always a way to meet at the major goal that we all have involved. So communication has to be the big thing for me.
Great, thank you. Second question, Director Miller.
Thank you. As a board member, how would you prioritize competing needs and priorities when there are multiple right perspectives on an issue and you're required to make a decision that will receive mixed reviews no matter what you decide?
Well, I am a team player, and if I find that my team members or my colleagues at the school board all have an opportunity to be able to focus on one area, I want to be able to work along with that, because I don't think anything gets done as an individual. I think you can bring people to the table together and meet at a common cause, but I do understand that I need to be able to work on an issue or whatever the case might be as a group. And I hope that I'm able to collaborate and bring that to the table with all the colleagues that I'll be working with as a school board member. That being said, we all have this one big idea of what's important to each of us, but we need to understand that we all have the same common goal, which is education that works for everyone and for the community, and putting our students first, right? Even though it hurts at times when we have to take something away due to budgeting or whatever the case might be. But I understand and the importance of collaboration when it comes to what is important and what is priority and what could be held off for a while.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Eric? I can keep talking.
No, you're doing fine. You're fine.
Okay.
You have more time.
Okay.
Next question, Director Hume.
Okay, 1 second. My question, as board members, we are required to represent all resident students and families who live here. This represents a personal sacrifice given the many hats we wear as parents, friends, and community members. What is your awareness of this reality in terms of always being a public servant wherever you may find yourself in our community? What do you imagine this sacrifice might look like for you personally?
I think being in this role that I do want to be in and belong in, I understand that my voice carries a lot. And if somehow, some way it is, dissected in a way that might only work for one student or one group, I don't want that ever for myself. I want to be able to work for all children. But I also want to find a balance in regarding what I think are the most important issues. And I don't believe in, I don't believe in not being able to speak those ideas and those goals that I have, but I know for sure that no student should ever feel like they're left behind, and no family should ever feel like a member of our school board has forgotten to include them in. So I think one of the most important things that I have learned when it comes to speaking for a whole community is when I'm talking, I want to be able to remember that I'm not only speaking for one person. I want to speak from my own experiences and making sure that everyone is included. So I think I would start with my experiences more than anything, because that really has taught me a lot and what I would like to see in any type of community or organization. But I do understand the importance of what my voice or whatever opinion I have, the weight that it can carry, and the way it can be perceived. But I hope, and I know I probably will get the opportunity to work with like-minded board members who's able to kind of discuss and talk to me about these things, and we can collaborate that way. So we can have a census, and we can speak the same language.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, Director Schatz.
Okay, Sue, a parent calls or emails asking that you take care of a problem they're having at their school. What do you do?
Well, first, I would definitely make sure I read the email 3-4 times like I typically do. But more than importantly, I think I would ask the board members who have been in it longer than I am to guide me, advise me. Again, collaboration is my big thing, because I know that we can all learn from each other, but I also accept and understand the opportunity that there are people who've been doing this longer than I have, especially when it comes to the voice of a community or the voice of education. So I would definitely reach out to my colleagues or board members to help me kind of understand and the question or the email, and also advise me on how we can consistently reply to that member, that community member, because again, census is a big thing. If you and I are both saying two different things, then again, there'll be that miscommunication involved. There'll be that we're not on the same topic. People will make sure to assume and put in and fill in their own lines between that gap. And I don't want to have a reflection on the school board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Director Chester.
Yes, and I believe you were emailed this ahead of time too. So this is the question where we're asking you to tell us about a time in which you were involved in a group decision that had significant impact on others, and you did not agree with the final decision. And then how did you handle both the decision and your lack of agreement with the final outcome?
Okay, well, I think maybe that information was sent to me or not, but I know I have not seen that question, but it's okay. And my background is public service, whether it is the important things that really touch families, which is, housing, food, childcare, whatever the case might be, in order to have a prospering family or self-sufficiency. And in my time doing this type of work, there's programs that get cut in the middle, and there's programs that get more funding than the ones that I think deserve more. So I can only think of one major one that had a big impact on me, and that is when I was doing work with first-time parents in Dakota County. And that was a program that was going on for more than, I would say, 2 decades. And unfortunately, it's faced a lot of budget cuts. And though it reached so many different families in Dakota County, the whole core of that program was basically to give first-time parents an opportunity to avoid the child abuse system or child protection system. And that is a major part in anything that we all are doing, whether it's education, whether it's employment, healthcare. If we don't start early, these things will end up happening as a consequence. And so when that program got cut, I made sure I contacted many of the higher level members that were part of the Dakota County Public Health, only because I wanted to understand a little bit of how did they come up with this decision, when I kind of had my own research and my own statistics on how well the program has worked for the past 2 decades. And again, there is hard situations like these where your hands are sort of tied, right? Like, you understand why that cut was made, but yet you try to make sense of it and also appreciate how long it has been running and the impact it already has made on all these families for the past 2 years. So I remember being satisfied with the fact that some of the members in the public health department gave me the opportunity to express my experience as the families I worked with in Dakota County as first-time parents, and what the outlook on that was for some families. And I really did appreciate when those members did welcome me back to hear my side, and I kind of felt okay with that, rather than the kind of closing the door on me and saying, nope, we're shutting the doors on this program, and that's that. I wanted them to be able to see what, I would say 15 members of that program did in the last decade to help parents in Dakota County. So I think the important thing is understanding that these things do happen, but in the long run, good things has happened before it was cut, or we can do better next time around and bring it back somehow, some way.
Did you hear Abigail there? Because I couldn't.
I did not hear Abigail. I think you were muted there.
Well, I don't think you're muted. I think you might have had an internet issue, Abigail.
Oh, okay. I did not hear you, Abigail. I apologize.
That's okay. The last question is Director Miller's.
All that to get myself introduced. All right. Please explain in more detail how your background relates to the ability to oversee this organization, especially as it relates to governance versus management.
Well, governance and management is totally different, right? Governance, I think, is just the overseeing of things and not really diving into individual individual issues and opinions that some might carry, and that should be left alone to the superintendent and those that her colleagues to work on, his or her colleagues to work on. I think for me, this part of the governance and management, though I have been in it in regards to doing the work that I have done so far as a public servant, I haven't really been totally on top of it as what a school board member would introduce me to it. But I hope that the skills that I have picked up so far in my career will help me guide me with that. But I also believe that some of the current members of the school board, and I think all of you, I believe in the fact that I can learn a lot. And given the opportunity to collaborate is, I feel like it's very, I would say, open. The conversations that I've had with Eric Miller, yourself or Scott Hume, I feel like already I can find ways to become a better public servant, because this is what we're doing, is public servant at the end of the day. And I'm more than open to learning more. But in regards to just making decisions, and I'm well prepared for that, because I've kind of seen a lot of what societal issues have impacted our community, whether it is this county or other counties that I've worked at, and I've kind of am exposed to how that is run and decisions are made.
Great, thank you. So that was the last of the formal questions that we had prepared in advance. What questions do you have of us?
Well, Abigail, I remember your signs being out, lawn signs being out years ago. And I was kind of, I don't know, I felt really good about getting your email the other time. I was like, oh, Abigail up, that's how she, you know what I mean? So I do want to kind of just let you know that I remember your campaign. I remember when you ran, and I could relate so much to the ideas and the platform that you brought. And I just think that when you have someone like yourself, go for these type of positions, you have people who are watching, and you had someone like me who was watching. And I just wanted to thank you for your service. And I think for all of you for just, really understanding all sides of how the education system is working and how does it impact our individual families in this community. So I do want to thank all of you for the hard work that you've done so far, especially, oh my God, the last year or two, budgeting and closing schools, and then now COVID-19, and we don't know when we will beat this. I don't know if I really want to join at this time due to COVID-19, but I think that I'm very encouraged by a lot of members and then a lot of people like yourself that as long as we work together, we can do it. We'll get through it together.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those kind words. Did you have any questions for us that you want?
Well, you said that if once the roll call comes through, it was a December 10, you said? What's the date? Okay. So my understanding as far as the information and the research that I did about a special election is that I finished the term that the vacant seat had, right? And then at that time, I have an option to run for that election season, correct?
Correct. And you would, so the person who's nominated to fill the vacancy would, would serve until the special election, right? We need to have, by law, we need to have a special election, which I believe is on our January agenda to set a date for the special election sometime in 2021. Once elected, then then that person would serve out the remainder of that term, which ends in 2022, and then would run again.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sue, I know this sounds a little confusing, so just let's. So actually, the answer to your initial question is no. That's not quite correct. What you said. We're not selecting you to fill the entirety of the role. Frankly, I wish we could, but just do that. But state law requires us to, because of the timing of the resignation, we will be filling the role for until we can hold a special election sometime in the year 2021 by at least next November. It has to be done by at least next November. So we'll be discussing it, but you can probably anticipate sometime late summer, something like that, or November we'll have that election. And then that person is, or that election is to fill that role just for 1 year until the actual rollover of the seat comes up. And then that person would have to run again for a 4-year term.
And that
So-
is November, not January.
Well, we haven't,
Or,
we
Okay,
haven't
can't be
officially,
January.
normally the elections are in November. We
Right.
will decide when we will have the, no, you were actually unmuted, Abigail. We couldn't hear you. I don't know again.
But the election in 2022 is in November, if that's what you were asking.
That is correct.
that's, yes, exactly. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Eric, for that clarification. It is kind of really confusing.
And we, just to clarify, we vote on December 10th to fill the position.
Right.
State law requires a 30-day sort of cooling off period. Then we will appoint, then you would the person would actually be sworn in on January 10th.
Okay.
This is what happens when too many people get involved in a process. Whatever.
My husband told me just nod. Yeah, okay, well, thank you again. That's the only question that really was in my mind, just to understand that special election piece and how that process works. But, you know, I am a person who kind of goes by what is given and led. And as soon as I hear information from you guys, I'll go from there. But yeah, I believe your judgment.
Great. Any final thoughts that you have for us before we close the interview?
No, I really, really am. I'm excited because I'm given another opportunity to give back to my community that has given me so much. I know that I worked really hard to get myself out there. Being an introvert, that was a lot of hard work and a lot of peace. But I have, either way, I believe that all the experiences that I have gained for running for what is actually a public office gave me a lot of information and feedback from community members that I probably would never have known if I wasn't knocking on doors, if I was not meeting with people who had different ideas and opinions and, you know, whatever the case might be about my own little tiny world that I built. And I think this opportunity gave me a lot more reasons to be able to do more in our district and in Burnsville and my hometown, because honestly, it is my hometown. Getting married at the age of 18, and I knew I wanted to stay in Burnsville, even though my husband was in St. Paul. And I think that this is somewhere where I do want to make sure my kids take advantage of the best education ever. And the way our Burnsville Senior High School has grown over the years, I it's remarkable. I'm very impressed, and I cannot wait for how far it can go to be, the trailing place for all other schools. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm doing this a lot for, my opportunity to have a voice, to number one, show representation, because I know this district has diversified a lot over the years, especially in the years that I went to school here. But also I want to do it for my girls more than anything, and show them they do belong, and they can make a home in a community that has given them the opportunity to be the best they can be. So I do want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity again to do this and to run for school board member.
Thank you very much, Sue. Well, this will conclude the interview portion of the evening. Sue, we thank you, and the board you can sign off, and then the board will have a group discussion following, just to summarize our evening tonight. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Abigail. Thanks, Eric, Scott, Leslie. Thank you for your time.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
All right. Since this is a workshop, we'll be a little less formal. Comments, questions that folks have?
So what are we doing now, Abigail? Just any sort of
Just general, general reflections, any takeaways. Obviously we have between now and December 10th to read through the applications and the resumes and think about everything that we've heard tonight. But this is your opportunity just to share your initial thoughts.
Just on the process though, like hearing what you described for December 10th, I get a little confused. So like if somebody nominates the first candidate and then there's a second and then there's a unanimous vote, does the second candidate even have a shot? Like, or would it be like two unanimous? I don't know how that works.
So basically the first round is selecting, the first round of votes is selecting the preferred candidates. Each of us has one affirmative vote to cast.
Oh, so of the two candidates. Okay, see that part I wasn't clear on. Okay, that makes more sense.
So then we could have a tie. We could have a clear preferred candidate, and that person that ends up being preferred would then go forward to be this part of the resolution.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that helped. I didn't know that we had just one vote for one or the other. I'm like,
yep, that was very helpful. I wasn't clear on that either. Yep.
And so just so regardless of which candidate each of us may ultimately decide we want to vote for that evening, each of them should be nominated, and then we would do the vote once they're nominated. Is that?
They would have to be to receive a vote. Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Board members may or may not nominate. They may or may not second. So basically it's possible, typically we have a nomination and a second and then we vote.
Right.
There could be a situation where somebody nominates and there's no second. Or there could be no nomination. So really it's up to each of us to decide, okay, do I want to nominate someone? Do I want to second someone? If we get to that point, then obviously we're voting, once we get past the second.
Okay.
And there will be additional information posted publicly on Friday to kind of detail that process so that we're all very clear about that process, the selection process.
Yeah, that was helpful about the one vote per person. That's it. So that's helpful. Yep. There's certainly, I appreciate their enthusiasm. I'm glad we had a couple, good candidates, who care very much about the district clearly and wanting to serve. And I couldn't decide in listening to them if we weren't clear enough about some of the things that can happen for them as a community member, as we're talking about the conferences, for example. Like I couldn't decide if it was better or worse that they didn't really have, a very good sense about that. So probably better, than not, because once you're in it, you're all in it. And so that's a good thing.
It's funny. I hope it's a long time before we have to do something like this again. But I was thinking that during the call that I was preferring the tell me about a time where you had to XYZ type questions as opposed to hypothetical things that they may have to deal with for when they aren't on the board and haven't been trained yet to be on the board. So I kind of feel the same way when I do interviews at my day job, that it's hard to give people a hypothetical thing for something that they aren't trained to do yet. So I think often the very illuminating questions can be the tell me about a time. So if we ever have to do this again, maybe that's something to remember for next time.
Abigail and I talked about this. I actually preferred not to do the standard interviewing situational case kind of interview questions because you got to remember, we're not interviewing a subordinate.
Right.
We're interviewing a 100% peer. And even in the cases where I have been involved in an interview process where somebody that would be not necessarily reporting directly to me or whatever, if you're still trying to, find somebody that you would be giving a task to, and we're never, going to be doing that with our fellow board members. Really, for me, what I wanted was to hear how they articulate themselves, how they come at collaborative decision making, deferential judgment and listening abilities. And it helps that they have some understanding of the environment. I say landmines that we operate among, but nevertheless, a lot of that stuff I didn't have a clue about until I came in, and you learn that on the job. So, I understand what you're saying, Scott. I wanted, and I do agree as we went through them, I think these, we had to do this again next week, there would be some tune-up of the questions. I agree with that. But we did, I think we got a good understanding of who they are and how much they've.
I completely agree. I think overall they were very good.
And how much they had learned about the job, and because I think that was that's kind of where the balance is between the personal experience and the theoretical. Is there's a lot that can be learned by watching school board meetings, by reading the materials that have been provided, things like that, and it was clear, who had a good kind of understanding and grasp of that, and so I think that was helpful.
There were some moments though that I wanted to reframe the questions because I could tell that they were sort of there, and I'm like, I want to reframe the question a little bit to get get the answer to, I think. But I do agree with what Scott shared too. Because I don't think any of us, it's amazing the hoops that these two candidates have to go through for something we ran for and were elected by a community member. It's such a different process that I think that's the hard part, because I think that there's like some of the questions we ask, I try to think of myself answering them when I was initially running, it's so different too, but I did feel like I got to learn more about their backgrounds and kind of the different qualities that they would be bringing to the board, maybe not fully grasping the questions we were asking completely the whole time, which is why, like I said, there's moments I'm like, I kind of want to reframe the question because I would really like to know what their response would be if we reframed it just a little bit.
Yeah, I think someone used the word passion, and I was going to mention that I respected Sue's amount of passion. Also, was probably a little concerned about it too. Although I will admit that she offset some of my concern with a fair amount of deferring to what in her words, what she can learn from fellow board members. So because as I went through all the interviews and panel conversations with the election cycle this fall, and then getting ready for this, I got a little frustrated with the constant questions around, sort of these big picture ideas, when at the end of the day, we're looking through, CAGR reports, and we're looking through budgets, and we're, and all that stuff's very important. The gaps and the enrollment issues and all that stuff is critical importance, of course. We have a lot of work to do running a very large organization that is kind of, grinding the sausage out in the factory kind of roles. And, I wanted to hear some of that, and I felt, like I said, I'm comfortable that isn't enough of a barrier for me to not vote for her. I just, I was a little worried that she had this sort of grandiose picture of what might be involved when, we do a lot, we impact a lot, but we run a machine too at the same time, right? I mean, that's I don't know.
Yep. The collaboration and the desire for it and the recognition of the need for it is a really critical element of any candidate or anyone in this position, for sure. Is it you won't always agree with what is being decided, and you have to be coachable, trainable, otherwise know that somebody else might know more than you do about this or has more information about you, and it's about collaboration.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate to have two quality applicants to consider. I really appreciated their thoughtful comments and the awareness that they brought, clearly as parents in the district and engaged community members. So have a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
Anything else before we close? No? All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.